Hey everyone, I'm Poisonblade and I hope all of you are doing well. So today's video is going to be quite a bit different than anything I've done before. There's still a speed build going on in the background, so if you're here to watch a speed build, there's still something here for you to watch. But I am going to be talking about my issues surrounding the current state of Planet Zoo. So I have to preface this video by saying three things. First of all, I did not make this video with any ill or malicious intent towards Frontier, the Planet Zoo team, or Planet Zoo itself. I still love the game immensely and all my conversations with the Planet Zoo team so far have been nothing but pleasant. Secondly, I am going to be talking about these issues from my perspective, so that's the perspective of a player and a little bit of like a YouTube content creator, although I'm going to keep that side as small as possible. And then third and lastly, I don't have any knowledge about coding or game making, so if there's someone watching this video or anyone down below in the comments who knows about coding, game making and like the in and outs of Planet Zoo as a game, please do share what you know, please share your opinions. If I state anything that you think is incorrect, please do point it out so that we can have like a useful conversation going on in the comments. And just as a general for the comments, this video is going to be very opinion heavy, so there's going to be of course my opinion and you will find probably opinions in the comments. So please, if you find anything that you disagree with, try to be as respectful as possible, because it will not help anyone if we start fighting in the comments. But then on to the topic of my issues surrounding the current state of Planet Zoo. I have somewhat boiled these issues down to two primary issues, and they all go about how the animals are in Planet Zoo. The first issue is that the animals don't feel unique to me, and then secondly, it's the rate that the animals are released. The second issue, like the rate at which animals are released, is a little bit more of a complicated issue. But the first issue surrounding that I don't feel that the animals are unique. This mainly comes down to how you build their habitat for them. Because the animals don't feel unique because they don't really have like any uniqueness in a way to their needs. Because if you all boil it down and go to the core of a habitat, it's always a shelter, a water and food station, and some toys, whether it's a food toy or just a general toy. And this in itself is not a real issue, this is how it goes. But when you really look into it, I can build a shelter for an elephant and then place it into a Chinese pangolin habitat, and the Chinese pangolin is completely fine with it. Even though that shelter would probably in real life not feel like a shelter to the Chinese pangolin because it's way too large for them. Needs of the animals just aren't really unique beyond like the size of a habitat, temperature of a habitat. Sometimes you will need to like change what kind of toys and what kind of food, but that's most of the time it. I hate to one day find out that meerkats have been added to the game, and that they kind of go along the same way as everything has been going so far, because a meerkat I think is like the almost stereotypical or like iconic burrow animal for me. Like they have usually these huge burrows and then, well, the iconic posing of them on top or near their burrow. But I would hate to find out that meerkats eventually, I do feel like meerkats eventually will be added, but when they are added, that they go along the same way as it has been going so far. That they don't need a burrow, that they are literally fine in an elephant shelter. And you might say like, oh, they will change that when the meerkats get added or when any kind of burrow animal gets added. But I already mentioned the Chinese pangolin, and to my knowledge, the Chinese pangolin is a burrow animal. And in game you don't find any need to build them a underground shelter. The Chinese pangolin is also completely fine in an elephant shelter, as I said, so it doesn't really feel like the needs of the animals are unique. I mean, let's say a Western African chimpanzee, I think, prefers in real life to have a shelter up in the air or up in the trees, because that's like their safe zone from predators in real life. But in Planet Zoo, you can literally just place everything for them on the ground, place some beams to give them like the climbing requirement, and they are completely fine. I don't know for sure if like it's a Western African chimpanzee that primarily lives in the trees. But just as an example for any animal that prefers to live in the trees, it would feel nice to actually have that accounted for in Planet Zoo, that some animals just prefer or want to have a shelter in a special place. Because then you need to somewhat rethink how you build a habitat for that animal. And that makes the habitat and the animal actually feel unique. Now it's just like place some things and the animal kind of is an afterthought. Like the decorations right now, or like how you decorate a habitat, is what makes the habitat unique, and then you place the animal in afterwards. And then for me at least, I sometimes completely forget about the animal because I didn't need to rethink how I built a habitat for them, because it's all pretty much the same. And you might say like, oh, this is because Frontier or Planet Zoo team wants to have as much creativity or allow as much creativity, but there is the option to disable the needs of the animal, so then you don't have to account for their needs, which in my opinion at least is completely opening up the door for that creativity already. So to not have those like special needs, like I had a Chinese pangolin habitat that I built recently and I mistakenly put them in the wrong habitat. And they were completely fine, even though that habitat that I wrongfully put them in was completely built for a pygmy hippo. That just feels like that shouldn't be the case. And because the habitats that I built for them aren't really that unique when you boil them down to the core for me, then I also just don't really build a connection to that animal. And this has actually been pointed out to me. But when an animal dies, you just replace it. There's no real connection of like, oh, this was that animal, I really built this habitat for them. After a while, like maybe at the first few moments, it feels like that. But lately it's just like, that's not an issue, I just replace it because there's no real connection to the animal for me. There's no real uniqueness to the animal for me. In the end, for me, they have just become decoration to make a habitat look pretty and lived in. They don't really add that much to the habitat by themselves. And I don't know if any one of you agree with this, but for me, I would just love to see unique needs to any animal, and I don't know if this is like difficult to code in or if there's anything in the game that actually obstructs this. So this is why I said in the preface of this video, I don't have any knowledge about coding or game making. So if you know anything about this, please do let me know. But I would just prefer to have more uniqueness to the animal, to have special needs that I have to take care of, and that I have to somewhat rethink every habitat. And it's not just like, I want to build a village. Oh, this animal could look good in that. I want to be like, I want to build something for this animal or for this animal. What kind of habitat can I build for that? I don't want the animal to become second to the actual habitat. And then the second issue, because I've been talking a little bit too long about the uniqueness of an animal, but I do think it's kind of a heavy issue for me because it just generally burns me out on the habitat building. But the second issue is the rate at which animals are released. So just looking at it from numbers, it's been almost or has been half a year. And excluding exhibit animals, there have only been 8 animals added. There is like the potential that some of them are reskins, which in general I don't really have an issue with. Maybe you have, so if you have an issue with this, please do let me know. I generally don't have an issue with this. If they like build an animal but use an existing rig, that is completely fine with me if the animal again behaves uniquely. But just looking at the numbers, it is kind of sad for a game that is Planet Zoo to only have 8 animals added in the span of half a year. Or, well, 9 animals if you include the exhibit animal, but I personally don't include exhibit animals in like actual animals because you put them in a box and then again they become decoration. But I would prefer to see more animals. Like when Planet Zoo was released, my hope was that by this time we would maybe have like 20 new animals. And I said that this is a complicated issue because, well, of course, I know this, it takes probably 100 times more time to make an animal in comparison to a scenery or building piece, because you of course have to account for AI, animations, and a whole lot of other things. Someone actually pointed this out because I have been going on the thought of like, oh, I would prefer to have less building pieces if it meant that we would get more animals, and someone pointed out like this isn't the right way of thinking, because there's of course within the Planet Zoo team there are different teams working on different areas of the game. So asking for less building pieces if it meant more animals is not how it would go. But I would just love to see more animals being added. And I am having like this train of thought. There is a small modding community. I don't know how active it is or like how large. I do think it's small. But when the Jaguar was announced, I immediately thought back to like there is a mod that replaces the Bengal tiger for a Jaguar. That was, I think, one of the most complete mods to find. And there was also pointed out to me in one of my streams that there is actually a mod that turns your zebra into a unicorn. So that was a funny thing to find out that there's that. But these mods always replace the original animal, so you can't have a zebra and a unicorn. So it would be nice if like these mods didn't replace the actual animal, that it sort of becomes a new animal in the game. Again, this is where I need to ask anyone who has coding or game making knowledge or knows a little bit about the in and outs of Planet Zoo, how this is. Like, I think it's somewhat of a restriction put on the game by Frontier that you can't add any new animals, or like you can't really change the rigs of an animal. But if it were to work out that modders can make new animals, or at least make reskins of animals, then it would feel like Frontier then wouldn't have to really go into reskins of animals. Let's say they, for like a big cat, a lynx is one of the first that comes to mind. Then the modders could make like the reskin or like the lynx, and then Frontier can actually, or the Planet Zoo team, in my opinion, could maybe like focus on creating different and unique animals. So again, I don't know if this is possible. I don't know if this train of thought is at any point correct, but I do know that in the end, this is inevitable, but Planet Zoo, or just Frontier in general, will move on from Planet Zoo. They will not really abandon the game, but they will have to move on to like Planet Zoo 2, Planet Coaster 2, or any kind of new IP. So then the game is kind of put in this ghost state of like it's there, but the main focus of the actual developer behind it isn't anymore on the game. That's just inevitable with any kind of game. Planet Coaster is kind of, I think, in that state right now where the developer has mostly moved on. There's still like some people working on that game, but I have seen still wonderful creations being put out on Planet Coaster. By the way of like the Team Maker's Toolkit, new things have been added, and for anyone who hasn't played Planet Coaster, I would say that the Team Maker's Toolkit is sort of like the modding way when it comes to Planet Coaster. Like you can make new things with that. If I'm right, Pixelated was like a big creator for like new things to Planet Coaster, and I will still find like dark rides, coasters and such from Planet Coaster that have been recently built that I completely just, my jaw hits the floor because I did not know these things could exist. And then when it comes to like Zoo Tycoon, these are all like games that the developer has somewhat moved on from. Recently, or at least before Planet Zoo was really released, the lady designer made some videos on Zoo Tycoon, and I saw like a lot of new things that have been added by modders. So it does feel like in the end, when Frontier or the Planet Zoo team eventually moves on to a new project, that the modders kind of have to take over, or some, in most cases, do just take over to still give life to the game, give new things. So it would be nice to see like that modding community be more inclusive with the game, or be more in with the game, so that we can already build that up, and when Frontier eventually goes on to a new project, there's still something going on with the game. These two issues, like the rate at which animals are added and the uniqueness of the animals, could of course go against each other, because getting animals faster, if it was just Frontier doing it, could of course lead to the animals being, in my opinion, more bland than they already are. So that's why I would say, like, you know, let's have Frontier focus on the unique and different animals, you know, have aviaries or aquatic animals, because For me, like, people have been calling for these two things very loudly since the start of Planet Zoo. But for me, I also would want these, but it is coming from like, I want animals that make me rethink the way I build habitats. I want animals that feel unique. I want, of course, more animals. I just want to have Frontier not focus on reskins, and let's maybe have like the modding community focus on that, so that Frontier has the time to actually make different and unique animals. And maybe they could then also increase the rate at which animals are released, but right now, just looking at the numbers, 8 animals in half year, yeah, that's a hard thing to swallow. And it's just also when the animals then are somewhat bland, makes it even harder. And just to round those two issues up into one, it just feels to me like the animals have become second to the game. That Planet Zoo has slowly or has been going into Planet Builder. It just feels like there's been more of a focus on like the building aspect of the game with like new pieces and all of that. And the animals have just become there. They are not the primary focus anymore, which is kind of sad because it's Planet Zoo, not Planet Builder. And I somewhat can find myself in this because the more visible creators of the game, or the more visible members of the community of the game, actually, are mostly builders. I mean, the Lay Designer, Silverhead, Rudy Ramkamel, Aston Wolf, Mike Sheets, Jure, and also me, we are primarily builders. So the more visible members of the community are almost all at their core builders. I would say, or this is what I think, but yes, we are the more visible members of the community. We are all somewhat builders in our core. But I do feel like we are also the minority actually of the community, because yes, we are visible, but how many really spend 6 hours on a build? Probably not even like 10% of the community spends so long on a build. Most people, I think, got drawn into Planet Zoo because of the animals. I think every review or preview on the game was about animals, not about the building aspect as much. It was primarily about the animals. So to see that the animals are actually just feeling like they lack something, they lack that specialty, that just makes me sad. Because even for me, like, I am a builder, I always said that animals aren't the primary thing when I build something. But I was interested in Planet Zoo from the start because animals. Like, I wasn't really that interested in coasters. I primarily, when I still played Planet Coaster, was more building buildings and not really coasters. But when Planet Zoo was announced, I actually liked how the animals looked. I liked just the aspect of animals because I liked that aspect more than coasters. So that's the way that I went into Planet Zoo. And then now, Planet Zoo's animals just feel lacking. They don't feel unique. That's just my issues surrounding Planet Zoo. It just feels the animals have become second to building. And that's when the game is called Planet Zoo. Kind of burns me out on building habitats. But that's just my opinion. Like, what do you guys think about this? For me, as I said, animals have become second nature in the game. Building has become more of a primary thing. So what do you guys think about this? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Are there things that you want to state that could add to this? Or if I said anything wrong, please do point it out. And that's going to be it for this video, I think, because I've been talking way too long. So just to hope you somewhat found the video interesting, and I will see you hopefully in the next video. That's probably going to be a little bit more happy than this one, because I went from a little bit frustrated to kind of sad halfway through. Again, hope all of you have a wonderful day, and hopefully see you in the next video. Bye bye!